Hey guys, this is Alex Cole, aka Coach Linny, and this is the Line Mentality Podcast, where we talk to lineman people about lineman things. Today on the show, we have Coach Jake Timmerman, who's currently moving from Northside High School in Georgia to Grayson High School in Georgia to be one of the OLine coaches. And I want to kind of let you introduce yourself here, Coach. But I want to know how you got from being a high school freshman to being where you're at today. Coach and teacher in Georgia, big-time high school football. Take it away from there.
All right, so appreciate you having me on. Like I said, my name's Jake Timmerman. So I'm from originally South Georgia, Southwest Georgia. I played at really small school private ball. Like my graduating class was about 38 kids.
Wow.
So I was 185 pounds as a freshman playing guard. So I wasn't very big. So I got really, really good at learning technique and everything of that sort. Now through weights and lifting weights and everything of that sort, I graduated at 275 and I was pretty strong. So I managed to get a little bit bigger, kind of grow into my body throughout high school, but I played every position on the line from center to guard to tackle. They never let me play tight end, which is unfortunate, but I played every spot on the line, really focused on learning the fundamentals early on, like I said, because I wasn't very big as a freshman. But I always had a kind of a passion for learning the schemes of things. I liked to know what everybody was doing, and I was always drawing up plays and everything of that sort. So my first 3 years, we were very, I guess you could say, conservative. We ran like a lot of double wing stuff, some wishbone stuff. And then my senior year, I actually transferred to a different high school, and we had a bunch of athletes. And so we went to the spread, and it was the first time in the school's history that they weren't like a wishbone team, basically. So we were spread it out 4 wide, a lot of stuff, and we would still get in some 21 personnel to run the football when we needed to, but a lot of 4 wide, 3 wide formations. And so that was kind of my first experience with the spread and kind of seeing it in action and playing it and everything. It was kind of interesting though, because my offensive line coach, he had been coaching since like the 1950s, and all he knew was wishbone football. So he's coaching us like wishbone offensive linemen in a spread offense. So I kind of had to adapt a little bit on my own. But it was a good experience. And then I played a year at Huntington College in Montgomery, Alabama. But through some personal things or whatever, I came back after a year and ended up graduating from Georgia Southwestern University, which is in Americus, again, down in Southwest Georgia. Graduated in 2014, threw some resumes out there, and just happened to go to the Houston County Job Fair, which is the school district I'm in right now. A buddy of mine that I went to college with, he went to school in Houston County. So he was like, hey, they have a big job fair every year. Let's go up there. There's a bunch of schools. Okay, cool. So I went up there, was lucky enough to get my resume in, and eventually they called me about midway through the summer, and I got on at Northside Warner Robins, which if you don't know anything about Georgia football, Northside Warner Robins is the second winningest program in the state in the last 20 years. The program has over 400 wins, as at this point now, three state championships. When I first hired, they had 2, but it's very big program, much bigger than anything I had ever been a part of as far as just population wise. They were like I said, almost 2,000 kids in the school, which is a lot bigger than where I came from. But I got hired on there. I started off as a 9th grade offensive line coach for 2 years. We only lost 1 game in those 2 years, so I think we were like 11-1. First year, we were really good. We had a really, really explosive kid at quarterback who just happened to be faster than everybody. And the 9th grade level, if you can, do a little bit right up front, the fast guys will make you look good. So, but it was great coaching those guys up front, getting to learn how to do things and learning from some older coaches. My 3rd year at Northside, I was moved up to the varsity level, where I did that for 2 years. And I was fortunate enough, my very first year, we won the state championship. So that was a fun experience to be a part of, to go to the Dome and everything. So like I said, I spent 2 years as a 9th grade O-line coach, 2 years as the varsity offensive line coach, or I should say co-offensive line coach, because the way we do it at Northside is there's 2 offensive line coaches, and we can kind of get into that a little bit later. And then this past season, I got a chance to be the coordinator for our 9th grade team, because that's something I'd like to do a little bit later on in my career, maybe call some plays, be a coordinator at the varsity level. So it was great to get that experience at this level. But recently I accepted a job to go to Grayson High School to coach offensive line there, kind of get back to coaching offensive line. Another very successful program. I was very, very fortunate to get on there. to go work for head coach Adam Carter, who I knew through. He was formerly a defensive coordinator at a school in our region, so that's kind of how we had a connection. So I'm going up there to Grayson, which is northeast of Atlanta, big 7A program, lots of success. They have a couple of state championships, most recently 2016, 2015, I believe, one of those 2 years. So I'm excited to get up there. Lots of talent in the area. Be a new experience for me living up in that area. So I'm pretty excited, and that's kind of where I am now.
Awesome. That's great. It sounds like, you're kind of the quintessential teacher O-line coach and working your way up the ranks. And that's awesome that you're going to work towards being a coordinator someday. Georgia football sounds quite a bit different than Oregon football here, although we are, growing and things are happening. But things like it being pretty normal to have 2 O-line coaches, stuff like that is pretty incredible. That's probably what I'm most curious about right off the bat. Because I've worked with a varsity O-line and been the O-line coach, and everywhere I've been, there's been the O-line coach. So, what are a couple of things off the bat that were different about being a co-offensive line coach?
Yeah, so I mean, we're pretty fortunate. We were pretty fortunate at Northside, and we'll be in a similar situation here at Grayson, where we'll have about 15, 16 coaches full time on staff between
Wow.
9th grade to varsity. And what that meant for me as a 9th grade coach was every position on 9th grade had their own coach. So even on the 9th grade level, there was a DB coach, there was a linebacker coach, D-line, O-line, quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers. So actually, as a 9th grade coach, I was by myself. But then, like you said, as coming up to the varsity, there are now 2 of us, typically just because of numbers. And it was great. The guy I was coaching offensive line with for the first year, his name's Kelvin McDavis. Then he actually got promoted to offensive coordinator. So then I worked with another guy named Torrey Howard. And it was great. I mean, we would work it out. The key is communication. The key is communication. Of knowing kind of what you're going to do at practice, who's going to take who. And it wasn't always the same thing every day. It wasn't like every single day I take the tackles and tight ends and he takes the centers and guards. Most of the time that's how it worked out because I had a little more experience playing tackle than let's say playing guard or whatever. But some days it may be, hey, you take the center and the right guards and right tackles and work this cutoff block or this reach block or pin and pull, whatever it is, and I'll take the left guard, the left tackle, the backside guys, and then we'll swap or whatever. So some days it may be you take the right side, I'll take the left side. Some days it may be you work this front side technique and I'll work the backside technique. Some days it may be you take centers and guards and I'll take tackles and tight ends. The key is communication. It's prepping, having a plan for practice. That was one of the biggest things I learned at Northside and got to see was how to have a practice plan, not just, hey, we have inside period or we have individual period for 15 minutes. It's okay. Well, what are we doing in those 15 minutes? You don't want to get out there to practice and be like, okay, we have 15 minutes of individual time. Let me think of what I want to do. No, you need to have that planned out. And like I said, especially with 2 of us, it was good because we could say, all right, hey, if we have a 20-minute individual period, right? Hey, 10 minutes, you take these guys, I'll take these guys, and then we'll flip. So the big key of it is just communication. Neither guy can have an ego, right? It doesn't need to be like, I'm the offensive line coach and you're my assistant. There was never anything of that sort. It was, we're both offensive line coaches and that's kind of the nature of the position. We don't really care who gets the credit, right? We're here to do our job, show up and get things done. So that was great. Like I said, the biggest thing is just communication, knowing who's doing what from day to day and period to period, and how to, you kind of get familiar with each other, how to set up drills and everything of that sort. So you just kind of feed off of one another, and hey, I think we should do this, or I think we should do that. Kind of communicate before and after practice.
Was there ever a situation where there was kind of the mean one and the nice one, and the kids kind of knew that, like a good cop, bad cop type of situation?
I mean, kind of sometimes. I've kind of, I don't want to say like I've mellowed out because I have only been doing this for 5 years, but definitely my first like year or two, I was kind of the hothead. I'm always yelling and screaming or whatever, but I've kind of figured out that's just, I mean, there's a place for it, I suppose, but like, I just kind of feel like the kids don't really get a lot out of it if you just yell at them for every single mistake, right? So there are things where, what gets me hot is like if it's a lack of effort. If I can clearly tell that you're not trying, then I'm going to get hot. But if you screwed up because your hand placement was poor, or you took a bad angle or whatever, it's like there's not really a need to yell at that point, because hopefully you're not trying to screw up on purpose. So let me tell you in a calm and collected manner how you can fix that problem. So a couple of the other coaches, they were more prone to give the guys up downs than I would be, because I guess just my personal philosophy is let's fix the problem by actually fixing the problem instead of doing some other things. But sometimes you just got to get on their butts, and so they kind of understand, hey, we really need to turn it up at this point.
Absolutely. I think that's great. I mean, today's day and age, it's so much more effective to coach that way, where you're building guys up and encouraging. And, when a lot of coaches lose it when they see, maybe whether it be a mental error or just something that they maybe hadn't learned well enough, and they try to jam it in with fire and brimstone. And it's like, that's an opportunity to improve the team by taking him and pointing out, the mistake. I mean, that's, what do they say? Dysfunction is gold. If you can find those little bits, that's where the team can get better, So I think that's huge. And, maybe years ago, guys would respond well to just getting screamed at no matter what. But it definitely seems like that's getting less and less effective with, today's youth. So I think that's a good adjustment for you. And, that's probably another benefit to having two coaches. I mean, for me, I just think of all the times I could have used a friend, not an assistant, but somebody to team up with, to coach, because you got 5 players, and you got to have them all on the same page, but at the same time, each got to be thinking differently. And it's a lot to go on one guy's shoulders. So I think that's really cool. Are you guys going to have a similar setup at the new school at Grayson?
Yeah. So I'll be working with Coach Aaron Hill. We'll be working together on the offensive line. And like you said, it helps a lot kind of ease the burden, especially during your team periods, especially if you're in a, hurry up, no huddle style of offense. You kind of have to coach on the fly, and it's even harder to do that when you got 5 players to coach. So, it may be a situation where, hey, during team periods, you watch the right side and I'll watch the left side.
Huge.
Yeah. So, and then also when it comes down to grading as well, like after the game, so the way we typically did things was I would grade the tackles and tight ends. And then Coach Mack or Coach Howard would grade the centers and guards. And we would kind of cross watch. I would watch the centers and guards, and he would watch the tackles and tight ends, just to see if we're kind of getting a general idea. But as far as the actual grading system and watching the details every single play, I would do the tackles and tight ends, and then he would do the centers and guards, or however it works out. So grading for games is definitely another big thing it helps out for as well.
Huge.
That can be time consuming.
Oh man, I could bet. And because of that, a lot of teams out here don't give their players grades during the games, especially on the OLine, where there's one coach, 5 guys. So, if I'm a player watching and I've never gotten graded, and I'm sitting here watching, we got an OLine coach from, powerhouse Georgia football. How do you grade a game? Like, what is the rubric? What's the percentage go off of? If it was up to you, I mean, I'm sure it might be different where you're headed, but how did you guys do it, or how would you prefer to do it?
So, I mean, originally, obviously, we just started with we just had the plus minus, right? Just, did you do your job or did you not, right? But obviously, we both know, there's so much that goes on in offensive line play. It's hard to just give it a plus or a minus. So me and Coach McDavis sat down and talked about some ideas, and the grading system we came up with was the acronym was EAT, right? We want to eat, I guess nice. The language the kids use, but it was basically, we graded them on 3 things: effort, their assignment, and their technique. And so each of those elements got a plus or a minus, right? So did you give good effort? Did you, on your assignment, are you going to the correct person, and are you doing it with proper technique? So for us, and again, that might be a lot to do for one coach, but because there was 2 of us, we would grade on all 3 of those elements for each player for each play. And so then so you either, basically, you could finish with a 3 or a 0 for each play. And then, and then after that, we totaled it all up or whatever. And based on how many pluses, for each one you got, that was your percentage, right? And it still ended up, you could still ended up doing it, you got a 75% or whatever. But then even further into that, had it on an Excel spreadsheet where you can see I graded out 75%, but most of my minuses were from technique, right? And then of course you could make further notes of that, on the Excel sheet or on HUDL, however you want to do it, or talk to them in person or whatever. So it kind of gives them, you get that just general, hey, I got a 75%, but okay, what am I missing or what am I doing well? So that's kind of the grading system we ended up on, was, like I said, the EAT: effort, assignment, and technique. I know some people still do, like a 0, 1, 2, or 3. So everything of that sort. I know some people don't even really assign grades to their offensive line, and I think it could go either way. I don't think it's going to make or break you if you have a number or a grade per se to give your players, as long as you're giving them valuable and constructive feedback. That's the important thing. So that may be, going back and let's say you watch the game from Friday and you pick out 20 clips, 10 good, 10 bad, 15 good, 5, whatever, however you want to do it. And you maybe make a playlist and then attach annotations and, drawings on the plays, and you can send that out to your players to watch Saturday or Sunday. So there's a variety of ways to give your players feedback. Obviously, HUDL and technology nowadays, you don't have to be on pen and paper for all your games and everything. So I like doing that. I like making notes on the playlist, and that was one of the things that was really helpful for me at spring training at Grayson this past month. Was I was still coaching track. So I missed about 4 or 5 days of spring practice, but I was able to make notes on the practice film, make annotations, and make a group of our offensive line players on HUDL and send that playlist out to them.
That's fantastic. That's great. I love that EAT thing, by the way. I've made some t-shirts with EAT, but it's effort, attitude, and technique, because, we don't give assignments when we're, working with guys individually. But one question I came up with on the HUDL thing, because I loved when I was coaching with the varsity team down the street, that was a fantastic tool. I always dreamed as a player of having something like that where I could be just on my phone, like watching film and getting coached up, because, you have so many questions and there's so many things. But with that HUDL, you can really just draw, and you do dotted lines and arrows and circles, and you can write full notes. And I'm sure there's times, for me, I had the whole page lined up with notes once in a while. But I don't know if the players know, but coaches can actually see who watches it too, right? You can get a little report as to who's spent any time on HUDL, and then and who's watched the thing you sent. Did you have any tricks to get them to watch? Because I found, and it was really, really disheartening, I found there was times where guys wouldn't watch.
So, I mean, the biggest thing for that is, and I've never used these before. I haven't gotten really the chance to use them, but I like the idea. I know some coaches will give quizzes through like Google Classroom. And so like they'll give quizzes based on maybe some feedback from film. So that might be an option. It's going to be something I'm going to look into over the summer, just because I'm curious about it, whether or not we use it, one way or the other, but I'm just curious about it. So quizzes is another way. And just kind of confronting the kids, or, I know some coaches have done it as like, hey, we've got conditioning after practice unless everybody watches their film, right? If everybody puts in, an hour of film throughout, or, let's say from Monday to Tuesday, let's say everybody puts in 15 minutes of film. And that's the other thing. You kind of have to be smart about how much film you want your players to watch. Like if you expect your players to watch an hour or 2 hours of film between Monday's practice and Tuesday's practice, that's not going to happen. I mean, that's, there are a bunch of coaches who aren't watching that much film. But so I think you have to be smart about your expectations too. It's like, hey guys, I need you to watch 15 minutes of film, between the end of Monday's practice and the start of Tuesday's practice. I need you to watch 15 minutes of film. And so I think the big thing with that is make the playlist, the cut-ups, right? Don't just send the whole practice to the kids, right? Find about 10 to 15 plays, a mix of positive things they did well, and then constructive criticism, and give to them. And I think that's another key. You have to be careful about your criticism, right? Because players aren't going to want to open it up if they know it's just 15 plays of you telling them they suck, right? So you kind of have to, kind of the sandwich analogy, right? Positive, negative, positive, right? So you have to be careful with how you present your coaching, your criticism, because, sometimes reading things off text doesn't always come off in the way you may want it to. So you have to be smart about how you give that feedback and not just tell them they suck for 15 plays. So find the good things, make so they want to get on there and see what they did good. Like every time we scored a touchdown in practice or whatever it was, whether it be team period or inside, whatever it was, every time we scored a touchdown, I included that in there to complement the O-line. Whether or not we did our job all the way across the board, that wasn't important. On plays we scored touchdowns, I made sure to throw in a positive in there because we scored touchdowns. So it's good. So you have to make sure to include plenty of positive feedback in there as well, and slip in your actual coaching points in there somewhere so they kind of, get it with amongst the positive notes as well.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's fantastic. Positive reinforcement and giving them something to look forward to, giving them something to want to get on and see. For me, I did one of the years, I would keep what I called a burrito count. And I said, if somebody got the first guy to get to 10 pancakes in a game would get a burrito card or something, for Qdoba or Chipotle. But so there's a couple guys who are generally, lineman-esque hunger type of guys, real hungry all the time. And they'd get on, just to see how the burrito count went, and subsequently watch all the plays. But it can be hard sometimes to do the sandwich model when there's a completely bad one. It's like great effort, wrong step, and you completely fell on your face, but you got up, and you'll do better next time. So
yeah, it can be a struggle sometimes. So
yeah.
And so sometimes for the players where there's just nothing positive you can find, I'll try and maybe save that for a more one-on-one type.
Nice.
Than making some give them 10 plays of clips to send through where you're just saying you did this wrong. So it's just kind of, you're gonna have to balance, and you kind of have to know your kids too. Like some kids can take that, right? Some kids could handle you telling them they suck for 15 plays in a row, but some kids, you tell them they suck one time and they're going to shut down. Right. So a big part of that is knowing your kids, know who can handle what as well. And that's kind of what I have to do now is, I'm at a new place. So I have to get to know the kids. They have to get to know me. There's only one of me though. And there's 15, 20 of them. So getting to know your kids is huge, and building relationships with those kids is the big deal. My former principal, the quote he had all the time was, they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And I kind of taken that into my football coaching philosophy as well as, make sure they know that you care about them so that you can coach them hard.
Absolutely. No, that's a great quote. And I love that. Let's talk a little bit about your personal football philosophy when it comes to the X's and O's from an O-line standpoint. I'm sure you prefer to run the ball at times, make sure that you guys are getting plenty of that. Most all O-line coaches feel that way. What are your favorite things to coach? And if you, let's say that you had your own offense, what would you run?
Well, I'm a little bit different from most offensive line coaches, I guess, because if I can sling that thing around, I'm going to sling it around. I'm a huge fan of the air raid. I love watching Washington State. I loved watching Texas Tech back when they had Mike Leach and everything. So I may be a little bit different from a lot of O-line coaches. Now, don't get me wrong. I love wide zone's my favorite play. So I love to run the football. But at the same time, if you got a dude back there who can sling it, especially at the high school level, you got to sling that thing around. Because especially in high school, it's so hard to defend a well-thrown football. So I may be a little bit different there, but I personally like to spread people out. Let's go fast. Let's keep things simple up front. 3-4 run schemes at maximum. And if you're going to be a team that majors in wide zone, outside zone, stretch, whatever people want to call it, then you really need to major in that and have plan B and then maybe a plan C, because wide zone just takes so much practice and reps to get right. But so go fast, 3 or 4 run calls, maybe 2 or 3 pass protections that may include a play action where you pull somebody. I was just talking on Twitter about that the other day. maybe a half slide, and then maybe some type of full slide. So something simple for the offensive line, and then make everybody else adjust off the offensive line. Your tags and your run game may change one offensive lineman, but then now, it changes the read or whatever it is. And I'm big into the RPOs. People are always like, "Oh, you're offensive lineman, you like RPOs?" It's like, yeah, that's one less person I have to block. I don't have to, bang my head against the wall, figure out how I can block 7 with 5, right? Or block 6 with 5. We lock on the backside, we run zone to the front side, and the quarterback reads the linebacker. So it's less people for me to block, the better. Because now I can get hat on a hat, and I can get double teams and things of that sort. So like I said, I started playing. We were wishbone and stuff like that. But when in 2014, my first year at Northside, we were playing against Houston County, another team over here in the district, and they had a little quarterback named Jake Fromm. It was his sophomore year, and 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 Northside is known for having great defense, and as a sophomore, he was throwing the ball pretty well. Just as a sophomore, and they were going fast, and they spread things around, and that's kind of the day I was like, okay, I think this has some merit, right? Because it wasn't necessarily that they had better players than us. I'm pretty sure you go turn on the film or go look back at the rosters, and we had the better players, but they were going fast. They were doing what they did very well. They didn't do a lot, but they did it well, and they did it fast. And so that game kind of opened up my eyes, like, let me start to maybe look into this a little bit more. Because at Northside, especially that first year, we're 2 tight end. We're going to run a lot of power. We're going to run a lot around a counter, and we'll mix in some veer as well, some option. So we were very, downhill run the football, which is great. And if you can do that, and you have an offensive line that averages nearly 300 pounds, including your tight ends like we did that year, and a running back who's 230 pounds that runs a 4.5, then yeah, you need to be under center running the football a lot, or not necessarily under center, but run the football. But if you got a guy that can sling it at the high school level, man, it's tough to defend. It's real tough to defend because most high school defenses are built on stopping the run. And so it's kind of an adjustment for a lot of high school defenses to stop the pass first.
Absolutely. And then, of course, if they do a good job of adjusting and stopping the pass, now you've got those wide open, A and B gaps, and linebackers are off and they're frantic about, getting into their drops. So you can hit them with a lot of draws, screens, and, some quarterback powers, that kind of stuff, I'm sure. So,
exactly.
Anytime you can really master in one thing, and then that other thing can open up, which is great. When it comes to, let's say, air raid, if in your perfect world, let's say you're head coach tomorrow at your favorite Georgia school, and you get to do whatever you want, would you do the thing where they spread out the splits and do that opposite foot kind of drop set where, say I'm setting a 3 technique on my right as a right guard, and I kind of move my left foot first and then my right? Washington State used to do that, and then a lot of those type of schools do that. What do you think about that?
So like I don't like it. I don't like it. And as far as the splits go, that just kind of comes down to the individual ability level of your offensive lineman. Like if you've got 5 guys across the board that can win individual matchups, then yeah, you can go out to your 3 foot, 3.5 foot splits. But if you've got guys like most offensive linemen in high school, you're going to want to try to get combo blocks and stuff. Then you may take your splits back down to about 2 feet. But no, I do not like the dropping of the inside foot, like on the old school vertical setting or whatever. I'm a big proponent on Charles Bentley and his offensive line performance stuff, the drive catch method. And so that's will be my teaching methodology. I would not ever want an offensive lineman to bail their inside foot. You want to maintain that posture, keeping the knee to crotch relationship, the outside knee down the crotch of the defender, using drive catch to stay in a good position. So that would be my teaching methodology, is following what Charles Bentley does in the offensive line performance model, because I think that's the best way to teach offensive linemen, because it's focused on biomechanics and it's based in movement. It's how can we teach our offensive linemen to move most effectively. And people say sometimes there's multiple ways to coach things, or there's more than one way to do things. And well, that may be true, but it doesn't necessarily mean your way is actually a good way to do it. I mean, you can do it that way, but at some point, we all have to agree our anatomy and our biomechanics work best in certain ways. And you can't get away from that. It's just science, it's physics, like I said, it's biomechanics. And so if we can figure out the optimal way for an offensive line athlete to move, then we can start getting into the other like football specific stuff. So that's why I'm a big believer in what LaCharles does, is because he bases everything off of teaching players how to move efficiently first, and then you can get into all the football minutia stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love it too. And I've been really happy to see there become a little bit of a standard and people start to agree. And, with the advent of the internet and social media and Twitter and stuff, obviously there's gonna be a lot of arguing, a lot of disagreements, but at the end of the day, you kind of form a consensus. And I think that's really great for us. For Linepro, my vision is to fill in the gaps a little bit by catering more towards the young guys, more towards the guys who have no idea, and focusing a little bit on that front, more on the strategy related to very specific situations, right? A wide guy versus a narrow guy. So because I don't think there's much room or much need on the more holistic technique side of things, the skill acquisition. They do such a good job. So I'm with you on that. The one thing, I think my philosophy at least is, as long as you can explain why you're teaching it a certain way. If there's a guy who's teaching to have them drop that inside step and he's saying, well, the reason we do that, is because it keeps the guys square, and we'd rather lose slowly this way than lose real quick. If one of these, low level, maybe Northwest kids who hasn't seen the weight room ever, and we have to start him on varsity, he can get in their way a little easier, something like that. Then that's where I'm open, to see it. And if it works, it works, it works. But obviously my biggest problem there is that when a kid goes towards wanting to get recruited for college, and 98% of colleges don't do that, then the coaches don't get to see him take any, near step drive sets and any kind of true pass protection there. So, and then he goes out to camps, he goes to his one-on-ones and he's dropping his inside foot. It's a whole mess. So right. Definitely the end of my philosophy there is that a kid should learn multiple ways and definitely form a vision in his head of what works the best for him. And then that way, when he gets to be older, if he wants to be an O-line coach, then he can have a range of options and explain why he picked the one that he likes for the offense that he coaches. So I think you make some good points there. So you said you guys like wide zone. I hear coaches say wide zone and outside zone. In your mind, is there a difference between the two? Is there a zone that hits inside the tackle's butt and maybe one that is going a little further outside of him?
So, I mean, the basic, I guess, the nomenclature, you have your inside zone, which is sometimes referred to as tight zone, but not a lot. But you have inside zone, and then you have some teams run kind of a form of mid zone, which is, I haven't really gotten a consensus on how people block mid zone. I know some people block it like outside zone, and they have the running backs aiming point further inside. Then I know some people who block mid zone like inside zone, and they just have the running backs aiming point further outside than inside zone. But it's more of a, the running backs aiming for that open B gap. But then as far as outside zone or wide zone, the reason I prefer the term wide zone is because outside, when you say outside zone, a lot of times kids think, oh, this is an outside play. But it's not always an outside play. A lot of times it's, it's going to cut, it's going to bang up there. So just as far as a nomenclature take, I prefer the term wide zone because it's not always going to be an outside play. It is going to be a wide play, but it's not always necessarily going to go outside of the offensive line, right? If you're, let's say like the Los Angeles Rams, they run a lot of wide zone weak. So they're running it to a two-man surface with a 5 and a shade. And so especially their left tackle, he's going to work what I call a torque and pry technique. So, especially if that guy's a wide 5, you're not going to reach him. He's not going to let you reach him. So go ahead and torque and pry him with your inside hand and turn him out. And now the guard and center are going to work to reach the nose. The guard will work up to the backer. And now that running back's going to bang that play in what was the B gap. Now it's going to be 10 yards wider because of the stretch, but it's not going outside. So that's, at the end of the day, we're all probably talking about the same thing: wide zone, outside zone, stretch. But just for me personally, the reason I prefer the term wide zone is because the play doesn't always go outside, but it does always go wide.
Sure. No, that makes sense. After going over it so many times in my head of, how do you coach this? How do you teach this? How do you get kids to understand this? It's so important they understand that aiming point for the running back, right? At what point do I stop trying to get outside on this guy, stop, fighting for outside leverage, and flip it and take him where he wants to go? And when you can time that up as a team, which, like you mentioned, is so hard to do, to get everybody on the same page, it can be super effective. I mean, now you're challenging defenses not only to be in the right place, but to stay in the right place and make the right decisions all across the board. So you can really gash teams with that. One of the things that I see a lot of teams struggle with, because again, I work with a vast array of kids, and I kind of ask them all similar questions to get a feel for what teams do. And I really feel that teams around here, at least, and it could be more of a widespread thing, they don't do a great job with their calls when it comes to the double team calls. And you don't have to give away the exact calls, whether it's ace, deuce, tray, whatever. But what I'm seeing a lot is they'll just have one double team call, and maybe they'll say the guy's name, or they'll just make the call and they're supposed to know who he's talking about, or there's not even one, and they'll just kind of mental telepathy it, So
Right.
Did you guys have different calls for each double team backside and play side, or how did that go?
Yeah, so the way we did it at Northside was we didn't have necessarily anything different, whether it was front side or back side, but obviously we had a term for the center and right guard, we had a term for the center and left guard, and then we had a term for guard and tackle and tight end. And the way we did it at Northside was whoever's working together, they would be responsible for talking to each other. At Grayson, the way we're going to be doing it, Coach Hill and I kind of talked about it, is we're going to have the center is going to make all the calls. And the logic behind that is, if everybody's doing the same thing, even if the center is wrong, if everybody's doing what the center says to do, then, we should have something at least, right? Versus, a situation where the left guard and left tackle, they're doing a combo to the left, and now the center and right guard doing a combo to the right. And now, you are going all in the wrong direction. So the way we're going to do it at Grayson is the center will be making the calls. And, yeah, we've got calls for stuff on the front side, stuff on the back side. And but the big thing is just everything you do, like especially in walkthroughs and stuff, have them make the calls. And Coach McDavis, he always used the phrase, if somebody texts you, you're going to text them back, right? So if I'm the right tackle and, my right guard, makes a deuce call, then I got to make sure I relay that back to him, right? So everybody's communicating. So that was a big thing we did is, even in our walkthroughs and stuff before every play, we make them call the combos out and everything. Like I said, you can do it either where it's the two guys who are working together where they talk it out, which is how we did it in high school too, and kind of how we've done it in Northside, or you can do it at Grayson, or the way we're going to do it at Grayson, which is the center is going to make the calls for everybody. Now you got to have a pretty smart center, and he has to look from tackle to tackle, and that takes reps on its own. But again, the logic behind that is everybody's going to be on the same page because it's one person making the call and not two people over here making a call and two people over here making a separate call.
I like that. And having been a center, I was put in that position at Oregon State. And being the young guy, what was kind of cool is when I was a young guy, I had senior guards. And so I kind of gave them each, we talked it out, and I kind of gave them each a job. The one to my left would check the safeties and the coverages and kind of be aware on that front. And then the other guy would be working kind of more on the front. So we kind of worked together and delegated a little bit because I wasn't experienced enough to have it. And then my senior season, it was kind of the opposite. I was surrounded by young guys, and the delegation was more relying on the smart ones to help the guy next to him, because it's hard from a center to really, talk to the tackle out there. So it's kind of a chain of command, and that was really cool to have that kind of control. But we did have one thing where the quarterbacks at Oregon State at the time weren't the very, very smartest guys. And then in college versus like the pros, the quarterbacks have a lot on their plate, and they're not sticking around for 10 years. And the pros, they can invest in quarterbacks and have them be there for a long time, and they want to put less on the O-lineman. But in college there, they actually had the center responsible to do completely for blitz pickup.
Yeah.
And the quarterback was oblivious to what we were doing. Like, he wasn't even on the same page. He couldn't change the protection or anything. And you don't see that much anymore. But how, in your perfect world, how do you deal with that? Does the center listen to the quarterback and make adjustments, or does he have to recognize, oh, it's cover one and they're, down in the blitz position, tight alignment, strong dog, change the protection?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's crucial the quarterback knows the protection. Like, I know there are guys that do it, their way or whatever, but I think it's very important for the quarterback to know where his protection is. I mean, maybe if you're, if you're an offense that only throws the ball 5 times a game, then okay, maybe not. But if you're going to throw the ball, more than 20 times a game, your quarterback needs to know where he's protected, where he's not, where his hot throws are, things of that sort. So definitely having the quarterback involved in the protection is a big deal. And then it kind of depends on how are you communicating the information from the sideline to the offensive line, right? If you're huddling up and the center, you send the wide receiver in, or the quarterback comes in and everybody's in the huddle and he calls the play from there, then the center, he knows the protection right away, right? So he can kind of make the calls by himself. If you're a hurry up, no huddle team and you're going on the line, I know there are some teams who, when I was in college, we were hurry up, no huddle, and our offensive line coach signaled the things to us. All right, so we as offensive linemen, we find the football, we kind of get our general splits or alignment, and we would find him on the sideline, and he would give us the signals that were relevant to us, whether that be a run or pass protection or whatever it was, and then we get set and go. Some teams don't have their offensive linemen look to the sideline at all, which is actually the way I prefer it. I prefer the offensive line. Go ahead, get lined up, get to see the box and everything, see where everybody's going. But if you're going to do it that way, now the information has to be communicated to the offensive lineman, either from the quarterback. I know some teams have the running back make the call based on, what side he's on in the protection. But I think no matter how you do it, the quarterback needs to be involved in the protection, whether he's calling it or not. He needs to know, hey, if they bring 4 over here, I either got to shift the protection that way or I got to get rid of the ball real fast. Because I think you run into problems when the quarterback gets, waylaid or whatever, and he gets mad at the offensive line. But you can't block 3 or you can't block 4 with 3, no matter how much you want to try, unless you're like Tyron Jones or something. He has both of them with one hand. But yeah, so there's multiple ways you can do it depending on, I guess, your general structure of your offense, whether the quarterback gets the signal and he gives the offensive line, some type of code word, whether it's a color or a city or whatever it is that tells them, hey, we're half sliding to the left, the running back's on the right, or, we're full sliding right, the running back's picking up the edge left, some type of communication of that sort. Or, the offensive line looking down there. But either way, yes, there's got to be some communication there, I think, between the center and the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, it's night and day, the difference when he knows where it's coming from and he knows where his hot is and he's able to make that adjustment or decide not to. Like, that's just power, And
Yeah.
Highly recommend to any team out there, the more you can do of that and the less your centers need to be looking at the safeties and recognizing what types of blitzes they are. And they just keep the protection on unless the quarterback says, hey, Ringo, Charlie, whatever, and changes it to a full slide or redirects the mic or whatever it is, as simple as it can be and effective. It's so nice to have the quarterback dialed in. So I'm 100% with you there. The other kind of hot button subject for me, from my experience, is snap count and cadence issues. We had a very jumpy offensive line, and I found out later that it was because we didn't have a very clean cadence system. So what do you prefer? I know a lot of guys are doing the clapping and the silent count. What do you guys utilize, or what would you do in the perfect world?
So I like having some kind of a verbal, I guess, to kind of give the offensive line an indication, hey, the ball's about to be snapped. Now, yeah, you could argue that might give the defense a tip off or whatever, but then you just need to be diligent about, every 10 or so snaps, go on 2, right? Kind of hold them that so they can't just tee off. But I do like the, some type of, even if it's just ready, set, go, something real quick. At Northside, we used, an audible snap count. At Grayson, we're going to use the clap, which has its benefits, definitely, in a louder environment. Doesn't really, I know some college teams, they're doing the fake clap or whatever, which I don't know how people feel about that or whatever, but it's just a way to kind of keep the defense honest. Same thing as, I guess, going on 2 with a verbal snap count. But I like the verbal snap count as an offensive line guy. Not to say there's anything wrong with the clapping, obviously, because that's what we're going to do. So I definitely think that's a good way to do it as well. But I like having that kind of, I guess you could say it's not sudden. They kind of get that real quick. Here we go. Kind of prep themselves mentally if you go like on a set go or something of that sort.
Yep. No, I think that's huge. Agree that I would want them to be yelling. I haven't done the clap, so I can't speak from experience. But I think the biggest thing you said was whatever's going to tell the lineman that the snap is coming, because that's what it's there for. That's why we have it, and the only way, because at Oregon State, the coaches to change it up would hold the go sound, so we didn't know when it was coming, It was variable instead of being either rhythmic or non-rhythmic. And the only way to change it up is to go on 2 or go on quick or go on 3 or double 1 or whatever you're going to do. But you can't hold it and change the, variable, the distance between the set and the go. Yeah. So to transition a little bit to the world of, college prep, guys who are in high school, maybe listening, who want to make themselves into college players, in some cases, maybe freshmen, sophomores, juniors. Because you're a teacher and also a football coach. So let's say I was one of your players who had promising height and good frame, was starting to hit the weights, but I came to you and said, hey, coach, I really want to play in college. I know I'll be a sophomore this year, but that's my goal, is to play. I want to be a Division I. And so I just want to let you know that so that you can kind of help me along the way. What are some things I can start doing?
So, first and foremost is grades. It's, that'll be the grades for a lot of kids are the things that close the doors the quickest on them, right? If you don't have the grades, it's very hard to get in places. So if you can, and you don't have to have a 4.0 or anything, to go to, you don't have to go to Stanford or something like that, but a 3.0, minimum, if you really want to go Division I, should be, really what you're striving for. Take some time to prep for the SAT, the ACT, those types of things, be diligent about those. You want to have good scores in those. So, number one is grades. Because those are the things that are going to open up the doors for you, especially if you're kind of one of those in-between type players, right? You're not one of the 5-star, 4-star guys. You're not the top guy at your position in the state or whatever, but you are probably good enough to play Division I. If you've got good grades, then, you might get that offer. But if you're kind of one of those tweener guys and you don't have good grades, a lot of doors are going to be closed to you. So number one is grades. And I'm not just saying that as a teacher or whatever, because it's the correct thing to say, but it really is. That's going to be what opens or closes doors for you. Number 2 would be just be a good person. Just what's your character like in the classroom? What's your character like on the field? What's your character like when, you come in contact with the custodians in the hallway or something of that sort, so just having good character, being a good person. You don't have to go out and do 100 hours of charity work a week or whatever, but just be somebody that teachers or principals or coaches can honestly say, hey, this is a good kid. He's not going to cause you any problems or anything. And then other than that, study the game, right? Go beyond just, all right, I know exactly what to do on 24 blast, study the game in general, watch football, be familiar with defensive structure, with different forms of offense, maybe even stuff that you're not running per se. Obviously you want to focus on what your team is doing the most, but just study football, right? Study defense, things of that sort. And then weight room, kill it in the weight room, get as strong as you can be, become as flexible and as agile as you can be. I think a lot of people miss out on those things, the ilities, as I guess you could say, stability, mobility, and flexibility. All right, and those are huge for offensive linemen. You can be 6'5", 300 pounds, but if you can't bend over and touch your toes, right? If you can't bend at your hips, knees, and ankles, you're not really a whole lot of good. So focus on really killing it in the weight room. And like I said, not just getting strong and, bench pressing a lot or squatting a lot, but focus on your core, your posterior chain, and being able to bend and be flexible in your hips, knees, and ankles are huge. So I think those things, are big, like I said. So classroom, just being a good person, having strong character, studying football, and killing it in the weight room. Those 4 things are huge if you're looking to play at the next level.
That's fantastic. Coach, I feel like, a lot of kids miss it, that it's so important to have your teachers and your coaches speak highly of you. Mm-hmm. That, they worry so much more about what the media is saying, and, what social media is saying, and what the rankings are, and, camps and this kind of stuff. And I've been telling kids lately, because I'm seeing a lot of people kind of freak out before their junior season, not even having much film in some cases having film. And even sometimes before that, 8th graders, 9th graders, wanting to get exposure, wanting to get their name out there. And it's like, hey, if kid A, it goes and does every camp and every Top Gun and FBU, whatever, and every regional showcase, and then but misses opportunities in the weight room and gets cocky and gets a big head. Kid B does the things you just said, focuses on school, right? Really grounds himself in the process and puts himself, he hits his goals and sets goals and gets sleep, and he's training on the weekend, and he's doing yoga and he's stretching, and he's really focusing in on becoming the college player and not just the recruiting aspect of it. That kid's going to have a better chance, because when the college coaches come to talk to the high school coaches and the teachers, that's when it gets done. That's when the deal gets done. So huge advice to any kid out there to just focus on those things. And I harp on it a lot, but it's the reason I'm doing this, is I want that message to get across. So I think that's really big from you. What do you say to a kid? So I'm a junior, or maybe going into my junior year, and I've got a 2.2, and I've got an F right now, 2 Fs. What's your pep talk? How do you get a lineman? I know every kid's different, but how do you get a lineman to turn it around? What's some advice you'd give them?
Just find time to, is it an issue? I guess kind of talk to them, figure out what the problem is, right? Is it a problem of, they're not doing assignments, or they're really struggling in the subject matter and they're not taking time to get extra help? So, kind of figure out specifically what the problem is, because not all 2.2 GPAs are created equal. So kind of figure out what the problem is. And if it's an issue of not turning stuff in, then, maybe there needs to be consequences, of playing times. Like, hey, and that's something you can do, as a position coach, is kind of take charge of your group's grades, right? And I know every school's a little bit different. Some of the, more really big time programs or whatever, right? They've got somebody who doesn't even coach a position. Like, their only job is to just do grade reports on the football players, right? Or, if you're at a smaller school, where there's only 3 or 4 of your coaches, right? Maybe each coach takes a grade level or something like that. And just do those regular grade checks and figure out what the problem is. But if it's, as far as a student, it's, find time to go to study hall, maybe see if the teacher will meet with you before school or during lunch, or heck, maybe even, you may have to miss a day of weight training, each week or whatever to go to, get tutoring or something of that sort. But a lot of times I've found, for high school teachers, if you'll show up with a good attitude and give effort, a lot of times, some of the other stuff will take care of itself. Obviously, you need to study and do all those other things, but a lot of times teachers are just looking for, are you showing up? Are you making an effort? Are you asking questions to show that you're improving? If you're one of those kids that just sits in the back and you don't ever raise your hand, or when the teacher tells you to break up into groups or whatever, and you're always the last person to get into a group, then that teacher doesn't really have a lot of incentive to help you. And I don't really blame them, especially me being as a teacher. There's not really a lot more frustrating than a kid who's been failing all semester, and then the last day of school before final exams come to you and say, "Hey, Coach Timmerman, what can I do to pass the class?" Like, that ship sailed 2 months ago, man. So just building good relationships with those teachers, and just make sure your work gets turned in on time is a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. I push a lot of either figuring out how to use a planner or getting an app. But,
Yeah.
I know I learned firsthand that the method of just trying to remember what the teacher said and when it's due, and trying to keep all that balanced, it just doesn't work, especially when you get into a very serious football situation. You'd have to have another plan. And so I think what you said is great. And just really just showing that want factor, same as the coaches, same as the teachers, that they can see it from a mile away. If you want it even a little bit, they'll help you turn it into a lot of bit. You just got to sit in the front. You got to ask them what you can do. And I think the biggest thing is probably it doesn't look cool,
Yeah.
And so you have to ask yourself out there, guys, do you want to look cool, or do you want to play college football? Because you got to do some uncool things, like trying in school, that might not be cool to your friends, but you got to stand out in that way if you really want to get it done. So, well, we could probably talk forever. You're the first true O-line coach, or active O-line coach on Line Mentality. So I want to say I appreciate you coming on. What do the kids call you? Is it Coach Timmerman or?
Yeah, Coach Timmerman. One of my players at Grayson, he told me, he's like, "No, we're gonna call you Coach T because Coach Timmerman's too long."
I like that. I was thinking something like that.
Coach T. Most of the time it's just Coach Timmerman though, but every now and then it could, they'll call me Coach T.
I see. Well, it probably makes it a little different, you being a teacher, because then you got Mr. Timmerman as well.
Right.
And Mr. T doesn't work so well.
Nah, every year I'll get like a kid that's like, "Hey, can we call you Mr. T?" And I'm like, "I don't care," but then by the next day they've forgotten. So
that's probably good. Most of those kids probably don't know about Mr. T.
Yeah, probably not. So.
but you could do a Halloween one year and come in with some chains and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mr. T.
Big cool chains. Yeah.
Pity the fool. That's good stuff. Well, anyways, I thank you for coming on, and keep doing what you're doing, and we'd love to have you back on. We talked about maybe in the season, or once you get comfortable over there, doing a little bit of film or something, and we could talk about some of the things we were saying. I have the power to be able to pull up some tape and draw on it, those kind of things. So we will discuss doing that. And for all you linemen out there, and coaches and parents, keep on keeping on and set the goals high and get it done. And we'll see you guys next time on Line Mentality.